Hokage married Kushina and became Naruto's father. Episode 61. White Lotus is a water powerhouse, while Uzumaki Ashina is a more scarce formation powerhouse. Now is the time to need the sealing technique of Uzumaki Ashina. And in the future, when Joshinai doesn't understand anything, he will point it out. After fusing this card, the host will receive all of Uzumaki Ashina's ninjutsu, sealing techniques, physical skills, combat experience, and cultivation talents. Estimated full integration time is 30 days. Does the host choose fusion? Fusion. After the character cards between the 1,000 hand pillars are fused, it is equivalent to inheriting all the character cards between the 1,000 hand pillars, and then on this basis, continue to fuse the character cards of the patriarch of the Vortex clan, Uzumaki Ashina. It is equivalent to Ye Feng having the strength and talent of the top figures of the Thousand Hands clan and the Vortex clan at the same time, as well as the blood succession limit. Uzumaki Ashina. A powerhouse of the same era as the original Hokage Senjukuma, he is famous for his sealing technique. The sealing technique he used was amazed even by the 1,000 hand pillars. In an instant, a virtual space appeared in Ye Feng's mind. In the center of the space stood an old and decaying sound shadow, which was none other than Uzumaki Ashina. Ye Feng's perspective was brought into Uzumaki Ashina, as if he was Uzumaki Ashina. And the enemy on the opposite side turned out to be the Nine Tails. For Elephant Seal. Gossip Seal. Under the seal of Uzumaki Ashina, the Nine Tails was actually stuffed into the body of a young woman, Julie. This figure is a little familiar. Ye Feng opened his eyes and could feel that he was very familiar with the sealing technique, and he could launch the sealing technique in his mind at any time, and he could throw it at will. In a thought, sealed a tailed beast. This is the horror of Uzumaki Ashina. Moreover, this is only the degree of preliminary integration. If it is completely integrated, it is simply unimaginable. Name, Ye Feng. Strength, Super Shadow level. Position, Special Shinobi. Character cards, SSS level Senjukuma, Fusion degree 100%, S-Class Vortex Ashina, Fusion degree 10%. Blood succession boundary, God level Muduan. Ninjutsu, Flying Thunder God Art LV3, Dirt Reincarnation LV3, Thunder Thousand Birds LV3, Epilotus LV3, Een Seal LV3, 100 Heroes Art LV3, For Elephant Seal LV9, Ghoul Seal LV9, Harem Art LV3, Shuriken Shadow Avatar Art LV3. The level of the 4 Elephant Seal and the Ghoul Seal, because of the bonus of Uzumaki Ashina, is directly increased from level 3 to level 9. Ye Feng just glanced at it and immediately rushed to the number 4 training ground at full speed. Who is so bold and scurrying over the village? Ye Feng ignored it and continued to sprint at full speed. In the night sky, even Shangnan only saw a black shadow flashing. The speed is so fast. Soon, Ye Feng came to the door of the number 4 training ground. The entire number 4 training ground was surrounded by a group of ninjas, and even mosquitoes could not enter. But you can see that there is also a 4 purple flame array enchantment ninjutsu inside. In the midst of the assembly, the huge two-tailed brigade is suppressing the half-tailed beastly whirlpool Mito. Danzo said to ask Uzumaki Mito to strengthen the seal, and now that Neo has broken through the seal, why is there only Uzumaki Mito alone, Danzo? These ninjas stand guard here and don't go in to help? What man? The administration department does things, idlers are exempt from entering. In addition to the dark department, the largest ninja troops in Konoha village are the administration department and the guard department. From the beginning of the establishment of the village, the Ministry of Guards belonged to the Uchiha clan. The administrative department, on the other hand, is a department jointly commanded by several families of Konoha, including the Shuinyu clan and the Mito clan, and many of them are also from these families. The administration department does things, and idlers are exempt from entering? Get lost. Ye Feng saw the 9 tails and the 2 tails in the middle of the training ground, standing together, and had a sense of foreboding in his heart. Because the 9 tails have already grown 8 tails, they don't have the original appearance of Uzumaki Mito, and they look like a tailed beast. Joshinai, Grandma Mito, you must be fine. Ye Feng rushed straight up. Immediately, a group of kami shinobi stopped Ikid. What are you doing? Didn't you see that the administration department is doing things, and idlers are exempt from entering? Ye Feng roared, if you don't want to die, let me get away. As soon as the words fell, Shangnan, who stopped him, was instantly frightened into a cold sweat by the terrifying momentum that erupted from Ye Feng's body. Night Maple directly burst out of immortal mode. The sudden outbreak of immortal chakra, almost visible killing intent, made everyone fearful. The ninjas of the administrative department in front of them all knelt down with suppression. Some of the old Shangnan, shivering, already recognized Ye Feng as an immortal mode. Now, they are completely afraid to get in the way. This TM is the reincarnation of the ninja god Thousand Hand Pillar. Episode 62. Ye Feng didn't have time to pay attention to them and passed by. No one dared to stop it. Ye Feng, what are you doing? Tuanzong, sleeping Koharu, and Mido Menyen saw Ye Qi break in, and immediately blocked in front of Ye Feng. If Ye Feng dares to break in, then Ye Feng will lose money. Get out of here. At this time, Danzo, Koharu and Mizuto Menyen, their eyes were about to pop out. The momentum exuding from Ye Feng's body made them want to kneel down and worship. Looking closely, the eyes of the three people were about to pop out. Immortal mode? Among the three, Mido Menyen was first so frightened that he trembled and stammered and couldn't speak. At this time, a gold and a silver behind it, two figures fell instantly. It is Buofeng Shuimen and Chimu Shuamao. As soon as they arrived, looking at the battle between the 9 tails and the second tails in the 4 purple yen array, they immediately frowned. And when Xiaojun saw Buofeng Shuimen and Chimu Shuamao coming, he felt a little confident in his heart. After all, it was the 2 generals of the dark department here, and no matter how bold Feng was, he didn't dare to do anything. So he turned to Koharu and said, Ye Feng, you want to do it? Before he finished speaking, Ye Feng directly slapped Xiaojun away. Danzo and Mido Menyen, as well as the newly arrived Buofeng Shuimen, Chimu Shuamao, and the ninjas of the administrative department who had already knelt down in front of them, their hearts were about to pop out. Ye Qi slapped Xiaojun away with a slap. Buofeng Shuimen and Chimu Shuamao's first reaction was horror. The murderous aura emanating from Ye Feng's body, as well as chakra, all gave them the feeling of being overpowering Mount Tai. Standing in front of Ye Feng, he had no confidence at all. In just a few days, how did Ye Feng suddenly become so terrifying? Even Kiki Shua Shigeru, the hero of Konoha, feels the same way. And how can Koharu say that he is also one of the 4 giants of Konoha, and he will fight when he says it? Tuanzo and Mido Menyen's faces changed, and they looked at each other, and they both had a sense of foreboding in their hearts. Koharu fell heavily on the ground, his eyes widened, and his mouth was completely unconscious. At this time, Xiaojun still couldn't figure out, where did Ye Feng get the courage? Dare to hit yourself? I am the elder of Konoha village, you dare to fight, do you know the consequences? When the ape flies back, you are dead. She touched her mouth, her hands were full of blood, the upper and lower teeth in the front row were all knocked out, and her mouth was full of blood. Night Maple. You look for death. Koharu's eyes were red, she had never suffered such a shame. Buofeng Shuimen, Chimu Shuamao, why are you guys still not catching this Konoha traitor? As for Buofeng Shuimen, he wanted to stop Ye Feng, but remembering the 3 generations of water shadow that had just been put in the coffin, he still looked at Chimu Shuamao very sensibly. Let the seniors deal with this matter, and learn from the seniors along the way. Chimu Shuamao frowned and said, Gentlemen, what is the situation? Who is inside? What's the situation? We asked Uzumaki Mido-sama to seal Neo, and he came to make trouble, which led to the current situation. He also injured me, he is simply a sinner of Konoha. Koharu has lost his mind. Being beaten in front of so many people, she couldn't wait to immediately smash Ye Feng's corpse into 10,000 pieces. However, Ye Feng ignored them at all and rushed towards the 4 purple yen array. At the same time, in the 4 purple yen formation, Jioshina and Uzumaki Mido, as well as Neo Yugaku, all noticed Ye Qi'd. Ireo smiled again and said, Hee, another person is coming? Do you humans dare to let go of the enchantment? Before the words fell, the Neo Tail Brigade was once again kicked away by the almost completely tailed beast Uzumaki Mido. When Jioshina saw Ye Feng coming, tears couldn't help but flow out. Night Maple. Seeing that Jioshina was about to touch it, Uzumaki Mido quickly shouted, Don't touch it. The enchantment array is attached to purple flames, and once it touches the 4 walls of the enchantment, it will be burned by the flames. Jioshina's face suddenly turned pale, and he looked at Ye Feng, who rushed up and shouted, Ye Feng, don't touch it. As soon as the words fell, Ye Feng had already touched it. Multiply. Ye Feng took a step back in pain and watched as his fingers were directly burned by the flames of the 4 purple flame array. Then the purple flame continued to burn along Ye Feng's fingers. Jioshina looked at Ye Feng's scorched black hand, and tears were about to come out. Ye Feng, Koharu, who was knocked out of his teeth by Ye Qi'd, spat out blood and smiled hatefully. The 4 purple yen array, without shadow-level strength, it is impossible to break through from the outside. This time the 2 tails and the 9 tails are out of control, one after another. It's all the result of your Ye Feng single-handedly destroyed. You are a sinner of Konoha. Ye Feng glanced at Xiaojun coldly. Today, I will kill you. Testimonials, see the readers here, thank you for your support for so long. The plot has come to a big plot, a big twist, a big masterpiece, and it will be more exciting next. Available at 12 p.m. tonight. There will be more than 20,000 words of updates by then. The first 5 episodes will be released, and then the code will follow. The little brother is ready to stay all night. I was sprayed all the way. In fact, I have no confidence in my heart, and I don't know how many people are still watching now. The situation in the past half a year, everyone is very clear. The younger brother has almost no income. It is very bleak. So, kneel and beg all readers to give a subscription at 12 o'clock tonight, thank you. If the subscription can exceed 1,000, 10 more per day. The little brother didn't sleep every day and worked all night. Episode 63, Ye Feng's sudden eruption of murderous aura shocked everyone. His charred fingers moved, and the charred skin fell off, revealing skin as smooth as new. The scorched finger just now turned into a completely healthy finger again, as if it had never been burned. This is the super recovery ability between the 1,000 hand pillars under the immortal mode bonus. Ordinary flames can't burn night maple. Uzumaki Mito looked at the appearance of the night maple immortal mode, slightly lost in concentration. It is this distraction, and the seal in the body is already uncontrollable. The terrifying evil chakra emerged from the body of Uzumaki Mito. The already extremely dignified tailed beast chakra is now almost becoming substance. The whole person was propped up on all fours, and the 9th tail had begun to pop out. It's about to become a real 9 tails. Ha ha ha, my 9 tails are coming out. It's been 40 years, I'm free. 1,000 hand pillar, Uzumaki Ashina, I will kill all your descendants. Uzumaki Mito was already about to lose control of his body, so he pounced on the 2nd tail and shouted loudly, Jio Shinai, you come quickly, I will help you seal the 2nd tail. Ye Kid saw that Uzumaki Mito was about to lose control, and his heart sank. Even if the sealing of the 2 tails is successful, what will Uzumaki Mito do himself? Jio Shinai was also so anxious to cry. Ye Feng looked at Jio Shinai's helpless appearance, and his heart hurt, and he immediately sealed his hands, and the huge immortal chakra instantly gushed out like a river, like a sea water. The strongest wooden ninjutsu between the ninja god 1,000 hand pillars. Immortal magic Mu Dun true thousands of hands top. Ye Feng's previous use on the bridge between water and fire was the art of the wooden man. And this immortal law Mu Dun true thousands of hands topping transformation show is a super evolved version of the art of the wooden man. The size of that wooden figure is not as big as the head of this huge Buddha statue. Ye Feng stood on top of the wooden figure, and the wooden man sat on top of the head of the huge Buddha statue. Therefore, the name of this immortal magic Mu Dun is true 1,000 hands top. It's Buddha. Ye Feng turned Buddha on the head of the wooden man, and the wooden man turned into a Buddha on the head of the Buddha statue. Manyen. Tuanzong saw the ground shattering and the land collapsing, and reacted very quickly, pulling away Mito Menyen at once. I saw Tuanzo dragging Mito Menyen, jumping back, and dodging the corner of the huge Buddha statue that suddenly appeared. This Buddha statue is bigger than a mountain. A hand is bigger than a house. A little corner, if you touch it, you will be seriously injured. Mito Menyen sat directly on the ground, looking in horror at the huge Buddha statue towering in front of him, with countless giant arms, which suddenly pulled him back to his memory 40 years ago. That terrifying battle of the End Valley, the terrain has changed. It was exactly the same huge Buddha statue that made him remember. Tuan hid in shock, gritting his teeth and not sitting down. At that time, they were still young and worshipped the ninja god. That person, with his own strength, was the strongest of the Jibwa clan, and at the same time subdued the most terrifying and evil Nine Tails, united with the patriarch of the Uzumaki clan, and sealed the Nine Tails in the body of Uzumaki Mito. Now, a completely different-looking young man, exactly the same immortal mode, used the exact same ultimate immortal magic Mu Dun ninjutsu. Nope. But Xiaochun was not so lucky, and was directly blasted by the corner of the huge Buddha statue that roared, and blood splashed. Buofeng Shuimen and Chimu Shuamao were both shocked and hurriedly retreated. In Buofeng Shuimen's mind, when he went to rescue Ye Feng, the terrifying scene everywhere appeared. Could it be caused by this huge Buddha statue now? That's too big. And Kiki Shuamao's mind recalled that when he was a child, about 30 years ago, the ninjutsu teacher told him about the legend between the 1,000 hand pillars. After all, Kiki Shuamao was born in the First Ninja World War, and he was not able to catch a glimpse of the style of the 1,000 hand pillars. Could it be that this is the strongest immortal ninjutsu among the 1,000 hand pillars? With the appearance of the huge Buddha statue, Ye Feng did nothing, and the 4 purple yen array was crushed by the momentum of the real thousands of hands on top. Just pressing it when he appeared was already far beyond the shadow level blow. Bang! The 4 purple yen array shattered instantly, and the 4 upper ninja who controlled the 4 purple yen array suddenly spewed out a large mouthful of blood, and quickly retreated. Does this still need to be hit? I'll go. The Nine Tails, who was almost free, was directly dumbfounded when he saw the appearance of the huge Buddha statue, and his momentum was weak, and he was suppressed back by the whirlpool Mito. In the spiritual world of Uzumaki Mito, the nine-tailed nine llamas had already torn off the lock of the seal with both hands, and half of his body had already come out. But the moment he saw the immortal magic Mu Dungeon thousands of hands on top of the body, the Nine Tails subconsciously retracted his body. Although the history has been a long time, that time, the Nine Tails were really scared. Now just when I see the thousand hands Buddha statue, I feel a sense of fear in my heart. Uzumaki Mito took advantage of this rare opportunity to relock the lock of the seal. Nope. The Nine Tails screamed, stretched out his hand, and blocked the closed door. I'm going out. Uzumaki Mito's 9 tails instantly changed back to 6 tails, but one tail was about to grow. Uzumaki Mito was still fighting with the 9 tails, his face getting whiter. She is already old, not as good as before. Originally, the pressure on Uzumaki Mito was very huge. If her seal was broken and the 9 tails came out again, what would happen to Konoha village? Who would protect Konoha village? So Uzumaki Mito has been gritting his teeth desperately and persisting, even if he insists on it for one more second, he hopes for one more second. Now seeing Ye Feng using Immortal Wood Dungeon thousands of hands on top makeup, Uzumaki Mito breathed a sigh of relief and was no longer afraid. At the same time, in her mind, a figure between the 1,000-hand pillars immediately appeared. Between the pillars, did you see that? Uzumaki Mito now believes that Yokaide is the reincarnation of Senju Pillar. Otherwise, how could you use exactly the same ninjutsu? This is samsara. The Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan are destined to combine and recreate the glory of Konoha. As the wife of Senjukuma, the nindo between Senjujuku is also the ninjato of Uzumaki Mito. Joshinai also stared blankly at the huge Buddha statue that kept popping up in front of him. Before he could react, a huge wooden hand was placed in front of him. Joshinai gritted his teeth and jumped on the palm of the wooden hand. The palm was retracted. Joshinai exhaled softly, watching the ground get smaller and smaller, and he rose higher and higher. It's so high, it's hundreds of meters, right? Ugh. Before Joshinai could react, he was hugged from behind. Joshinai, are you okay? Joshinai's shoulders trembled, he shook his head, and tears dripped down. It's okay, I'm fine, I'm back, and I won't let anyone hurt you. Joshinai's body trembled for a moment, and he suddenly turned around and kissed Ye Feng deeply. Feilu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect. Episode 64. Time seemed to stop at this moment. Joshinai tasted it shallowly, and Ye Feng felt too dissatisfied. Save Grandma Mito. Joshinai said with a red face. Ye Feng nodded, his hands sealed. Suddenly, the entire heaven and earth suddenly darkened. An incomparably terrifying aura was being released and spreading, like a terrifying wave crashing on the shore, and the entire continent was suddenly shaken. The 1,000-meter-high Buddha statue has completely risen, and the continuous peaks are like rockeries in front of this giant Buddha. Thousands of huge Buddha palms covering the sky. The entire village of Konoha was shaking strongly. What's going on? Is there an earthquake? What's that? Everyone in Konoha village was awakened. Everyone ran out into the street. Looking up, I don't know how tall, looking up at the huge Buddha statue with 1,000 hands on the clouds and mist, suddenly felt like the end of the world had come. The Uchiha clan, Uchiha Mikoto, with Uchiha with the soil, is receiving a meeting from the head of the family, Uchiha Shina. Suddenly, the ground shook wildly, and everyone walked out. Uchiha saw the huge Buddha statue in an instant, and shivered. This is the strongest ninjutsu of the first generation. At that time, Uchiha was still a 3-year-old child, at the gate of the village, watching the battle of the End Valley from afar, which was the most terrifying and shocking battle he had ever seen in his life, and it was indelible in his memory. This huge Buddha statue he will never forget for the rest of his life. Who is it? Is it Night Maple? Uchiha immediately remembered Ye Feng, but he couldn't believe it at all. He didn't know that there was a survivor child in the intercolumn cell experiment of the big snake pill before. But that child's Mudan is not worth mentioning at all. And before, Uchiha was also a wooden dun who had seen the Night Maple in an instant. Although it was very strong, it was still far from enough compared to the 1,000-hand pillar. There is a difference between Mudan and Muduan, and the original Hokage-sama Mudan is the real Muduan. Mikoto and Obito's eyes also widened. This giant Buddha, this 1,000 hands, is too familiar. Isn't it the super ninjutsu that Yokaide used when he let them go at the bridge across the sea? Mikoto and Obito looked back as they ran. It's just not as huge as it is now, right? That's 10 times bigger? Is it Yokaide? Mikoto herself couldn't believe it. The Hyuga family, Hyuga Heavenly Blade, Hinata's oldest elder, one of the 38 disciples of the second-generation Hokage Senjutsu, looked at the giant Buddha and bowed directly to the ground. This is the strongest technique of the first-generation adults, Immortal Femu Duan. The people of the Hyuga gate behind also couldn't help but kneel on the ground and admire the miracle. Hinata Hayashi in the back secretly raised his head and couldn't help but use the wide-eyed telescopic eye, using chakra to multiply the eye's ability and see the huge Buddha statue a kilometer away. He vaguely felt that the top of this giant Buddha's head seemed to be a person. Take a closer look, it's a wooden man. The wooden man is the man on his head. Why is this figure so familiar? Suddenly, blood flowed from the edge of Hinata's eyes, and his eyes went black, and he fainted directly. Hayashi. The next head of the Hyuga family fell, and the people of the Hyuga family suddenly panicked. The high-ranking members of the other major families all widened their eyes. Among them, there were also a few elders, who had been there since before the establishment of Konoha's village, and their bodies trembled when they looked at the thousand hands Buddha statue. Oh my god, what thousands of hands? Impossible. Who is this? On the border of the land of fire and the land of thunder, two huge chakras suddenly erupted. The boulder next to it exploded instantly. With the explosion of the stone, I saw two figures colliding together at an extremely fast speed, and then separated instantly. Lei Dun, Lei Li Hot Knife. Wuduan Dalian Bullet Technique. 3 generations of Hokage and 3 generations of Thunder Shadow have made their last killers. Rumble. With a loud bang, the battlefield filled instantly. Suddenly, a black shadow jumped out from inside. It was the 3rd generation of Hokage Ape Flying Sun, with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. And the 3 generations of Laying remained in place and did not catch up. On the other side, Orochimaru, Tsunade is dealing with the partner of the 3rd generation of Thunder Shadow, the current Yaoi Rin Juli, Fogai. Half-tailed beastly Fokai, with 1 enemy and 2, is no less. The big snake pill was smashed by Fogai's punch, fell down, and got up again. There was a twinkle in his eyes. The power of Yaoi, he suddenly wanted to study it. At this moment, a terrifying tremor came from Konoha village. The ground beneath everyone's feet trembled. What's going on? Was there an earthquake? Yao faced the two of Orochimaru and Tsunade, who had already gained the advantage, and suddenly hurriedly retreated. Even the 3 generations of Laying were very puzzled. Fogai. What's wrong? The half-tailed beast Fokai said in a low voice. I don't know why, the power of the 8 tails suddenly became restless. The 3rd generation of Laying hurriedly stepped back. It won't be a problem with your seal, right? I don't know. Look over there. They suddenly saw that on the other side of Konoha village, a giant Buddha with 1,000 hands that was bigger than a mountain range. What's that? Bokai mused, I feel Yao's fear. The 3rd generation of Lei Kaga looked at Sarutobi Hinata, and then at Orochimaru and Tsunade on the other side. At this time a white figure fell from the sky. I'm not late, am I? Jiraiya also arrived, and the 3 shinobi of Konoha gathered. The 3 generations of Laying saw that they couldn't do anything, and immediately said, we retreat. Tsunade turned his head to look at the huge 1,000 hands Buddha statue and was stunned. Orochimaru said with a smile, is that Konoha? Zilai also said with a shocked face, 1,000-hand giant Buddha, is that the art of Muduan Murin? Such a big wooden man? The breath of the ape Flying Sun slash was a little weak, but his eyes were bright, and he glanced at the 1,000-hand giant Buddha and said, that's not the art of the wooden man, let's go back immediately. As a personal disciple of the first Hokage and the second Hokage, the first reaction of Sarutobi Hinata when he saw the real thousands of hands and the top of the kaku was Ye Feng. Nothing will happen in the village. Ape Fei Richo's mind immediately came to mind the weird smile that had appeared not long ago, when Tuanzong left first. Tuanzong, don't make any more trouble. And in the Wuing village, the sudden disappearance of the 3 generations of Water Shadow and the Ninja Knife 7 caused the entire Wuing village to fall into civil strife. The eyes of all the high-level people were on the position of Water Shadow. At this time, on the other side of the sea, a huge Buddha statue suddenly appeared, which startled everyone in Wuing village. Oh my god, what is that? Everyone was stunned. Over there is the direction of Konoha village, could it be some forbidden technique in Konoha village? In Wayne village, Tokage Inoki was listening to the report of his subordinates and learned that Laying was fighting against Hokage, preparing to take a blitzkrieg attack on Yunin village and outflank the back road of Yunin village to avenge the attack on Wayne village during World War II. Suddenly, the ground shook a little. Inoki walked out the window and saw a huge giant Buddha with 1,000 hands suddenly appearing. Am I blinded? Inoki wiped his eyes, and his eyes were about to pop out. Come on, immediately go to Konoha to find out, what is the situation of this 1,000-hand giant Buddha? Yes, such a Kitsama. All at once, 3 Shainin squads immediately set off from Iwahide village and headed for Konoha. In Inoki's mind, 40 years later, he was still young, and as an emissary of Iwahide village, he went to Konoha village to worship. In Shain village, the 3 generations of wind shadows looked at the super-huge Buddha statue from afar, and they were in a daze. Such a huge Buddha statue? Bigger than a mountain? Just when the 3 generations of wind shadows lost their minds, they found themselves caught in illusion. There was a desolate desert in the illusion, and there was no one. Where is this? Suddenly, in front of him, 2 people appeared. A figure is about 10 years old, with short orange hair, beautiful appearance, and a black robe. The other figure is an old man. Just his eyes. Kaleidoscope Sharingan. An hour later, the eyes of the 3 generations of wind shadow widened, unable to believe that they had died at the hands of 2 unknown figures. The dark red blood seeped into the yellow sand, slowly submerging the body of the 3 generations of wind shadows and disappearing. In this way, the Red Sand Scorpion and Uchiha Ba joined forces to assassinate successfully, and dragged the corpse away. The wind shadow disappeared, and the village was in chaos. Ye Feng didn't expect that the immortal magic would escape he used this time, the strongest ninjutsu among the 1,000-hand pillars, shocked the entire ninja world. Moreover, he accidentally assisted in the joint assassination of the Red Sand Scorpion and Uchiha Madara. The flapping wings of this butterfly of Yikid flashed the great battle of the entire ninja world. The accidental disappearance of the 3 generations of wind shadows is the trigger for the Third Ninja World War. Rumble. A bang. The whole continent shook. The birthplace of the tremor was the training ground on the edge of Konoha village. Say that it is a training ground, it is already a ruin. Give me a good stay. A giant hand of the 1,000-hand giant Buddha stretched out, covering the sky and shaking the world. This terrifying aura made the 2 tails and 9 tails in front of them suddenly frightened, and the hair all over their bodies couldn't help but stand up. Tailed Beast Jade. A terrifying purple-black chakra ball instantly condensed from the mouth of the 2-tailed brigade. In a short moment, the tailed beast Jade burst out. The breath of destruction distorted the air. With such power, I am afraid that it can destroy a mountain. However, the hand of the 1,000-hand giant Buddha is covered like a 5-finger mountain. The tailed beast Jade exploded in the big hand of the 1,000-hand giant Buddha, but only a little wood chips were dropped. Nope. Neo Jiyu shouted in horror as he looked at the big hand trying to cover its field. Rumble. A bang. It's like an earthquake. The smoke and dust quickly dispersed, and the second tail did not dare to speak, shivering, and was held down by a big hand. It's like being pressed under the 5-finger mountain. Episode 65. On the other side, the seal of Uzumaki Mido is still very unstable. The half-tailed beast has not been cancelled, and the 7th tail is about to move. Ye Feng frowned, cancelling the real thousands of hands on top, mainly because the consumption of chakra was too great. It is equivalent to 100 times the art of the wooden man, and every second consumes chakra. Only a super chakra reservoir like the 1,000-hand pillar can withstand it. Ye Feng slowly fell down holding Jioshinai, looked at Jioshinai and said, "Wait for me." Jioshinai nodded and said, "Ye Feng, I know the sealing technique, let me come, it'll be fine." Ye Feng still didn't quite believe in Jioshinai's sealing technique. After all, Jioshinai was a novice, and unlike himself, he inherited the sealing technique of Uzumaki Ashina. Jioshinai said anxiously, "Ye Feng, you don't understand the sealing technique. No one knows the Vortex clan's sealing technique better than me." Ye Feng smiled and said. Before the words fell, Ye Feng's figure flashed, and he had already arrived in front of Uzumaki Mido. Uzumaki Mido was still struggling with the 9 tails, and said with difficulty, "Ye Kid, you quickly call Jioshinai over and strengthen the seal for me." In the spirit world of Uzumaki Mido, the 9 tails roared, "Let me out." Now the 9 tails regretted dying. What did he provoke just now? If he hadn't been instigated just now, he would have already gotten out of trouble. Even if this guy is so difficult as the guy 4 years ago, if you don't fight him, as long as you escape, you can escape. As a result, he provoked himself and ruined the great opportunity. The 9 tails themselves wanted to hammer themselves in the chest, they were so depressed. Uzumaki Mido saw that Ye Feng ignored her, and said anxiously, "Ye Feng, hurry up, it's too late." The voice of the 9 tails came directly from Uzumaki Mido's body, "Let me out. Let you go, let me stay in it obediently." Ye Feng said, casually raised his right hand, and 5 different attributes of chakra appeared from his 5 fingers. This formation, Uzumaki Mido knew at a glance that it was a 5-element seal. When did Ye Feng play with the 5-element seal so skillfully? No, it's not a 5-element seal. Under the shocked look of Uzumaki Mido, Yokaid's hand pressed on the seal. It's over. The reinforcement seal is not a 5-element seal. When Ye Feng heard Uzumaki Mito's words, he was stunned for a moment and said, "Do you understand the sealing technique? This is how the strongest of your Uzumaki clan, your former patriarch, Uzumaki Ashina's knowledge points, were taught. The best way to strengthen the seal is the 5-element seal plus elephant seal. You don't understand." Ye Feng's other hand opened the 4-elephant seal at the same time and pressed it again. The 9 tails just laughed, thinking that Ye Feng was going to help it open the seal, but after only 1 second of joy, it suddenly found itself bound by countless chains and dragged into the darkness. And the iron door that had already been opened, relocked. And not 1 lock, but 3. The original seal, plus the 5 and 4 elephant seals newly added by Night Maple. Uzumaki Mito was stunned and instantly returned to his human form. That's all right? This is completely beyond the Uzumaki Mito view. She doesn't understand. Kushina saw that Uzumaki Mito had returned to normal, and quickly walked up. "Grandma Mito, are you all right?" Uzumaki Mito felt his body, shook his head and said, "It seems to be all right." She couldn't be sure if something was wrong with her now, because the 2 seals of Night Maple were beyond her comprehension. This is where to learn the superb sealing technique. In fact, it is no wonder that Uzumaki Mito does not understand, because this is the bottom of the press box of Uzumaki Ashina, and the sealing technique is also to be taught according to aptitude, and it is used according to the actual situation, and Uzumaki Ashina has not found a suitable successor with understanding, and it is not in the world. Uzumaki Mito, by contrast, has only learned the surface. Ye Feng said again, "Grandma Mito, the seal is reinforced now, but the 9-tailed chakra that you can borrow in the future will also be reduced." Uzumaki Mito nodded and said, "It's okay." The second tail saw that the 9 tails were almost about to break the seal, and they were sealed back in an instant, and they were so scared that they turned around and ran. This human being is too terrifying, and he can be wooden and sealed, he is simply not a human. Niao has already decided not to enter the land of fire 1 step in the future. However, as soon as the second tail turned his head to escape, Kushina shouted angrily, "King Kong blockade." Kushina saw that he had been playing soy sauce for so long, and he was also embarrassed, and quickly used the secretary of the Uzumaki clan King Kong to blockade, and multiple chakra chains flew out from Kushina's back, tying the 2 tails and brigades. "Let go of me, human." Ye Feng said speechlessly, "The IQ of animals is a little low." Back and forth just these few words. Yolu suddenly roared, "Who are you talking about?" Saying that, the second tail and brigade suddenly became difficult, and Kushina's face suddenly turned white. Ye Feng was suddenly unhappy, his figure flashed, came to the front of the second tail brigade, and kicked over. Rumble. The huge, mountain-like Erway brigade was directly kicked off the ground, stayed in the air for a moment, and then smashed down again. Bang. I just said, what's wrong with you? Bang. You're not satisfied, are you? Bang. If you are a dog, you have to look like a dog. Ye Feng held down the head of the second tail and brigade, smashed it 3 times in a row, and finally smashed into the ground. The second tail was prodded again, and did not dare to pull out his head at all. It said in an urn, "I was wrong, big brother, I am a cat, not a dog. Whether it's a cat or a dog, you will give me obedience." Everyone present had a wonderful face. The strength of Ye Feng was completely beyond their imagination. The Neo-Yugade, who was powerful enough to destroy Konoha, was actually defeated by 2 or 3 punches from Ye Feng. Wufeng Shuimen glanced at Chimu Shuamao, and Chimu Shuamao was still a little stunned and said, "Look what I do, my specialty is assassination." Ye Feng, this is a confrontation of absolute strength, I am not as good as him. Chimu Shuamao knew very well that if he encountered the 2 tails and brigade, he could escape, but it was impossible to fight with his fists. Wufeng Shuimen was unbalanced in his heart. Ye Feng's fist is also too hard, right? Then, in Wufeng Shuimen's mind, 3 generations of water shadow corpses appeared. Ye Feng's strength was too sudden. When Tuanzong and Mito Menyan saw such a situation, their expressions were very exciting, and they secretly retreated while Ye Feng was not paying attention. There was also Xiaochun, who was completely afraid to shout, and secretly crawled out. Where did this night maple come from? How could it be so terrifying? He was able to enter the immortal mode, and he was able to use the forbidden technique of the first Hokage-sama. Now, Koharu regretted dying in his heart. She really didn't expect Ye Feng to be so strong. If she knew this, she wouldn't mess with Ye Feng to death. Now, Koharu feels that her life is threatened. However, Koharu crawled and ran into a person. Looking back, I was so frightened that my soul came out. Ye Feng squatted down and looked at Xiaochun and said, "What did you just say?" Episode 66. Turning to sleep, Koharu looked at Ye Feng with a terrified face, as if looking at a ghost, and kept backing away. "Don't come here. Help. Where is the dark part? Just as Koharu was screaming, one by one, dark ninjas, wearing masks, appeared next to Kiki Shuamao and Ye Feng Shuimen. Two adults, what's going on? Because Chimu Shuamao and Buofeng Shuimen actually have the identity of dark cadres, now the village is leaderless, and the dark ninjas are naturally headed by Chimu Shuamao and Buofeng Shuimen. They were all stunned when they looked at Xiaochun's very miserable appearance. This is one of the two elders of the Ministry of Administration, turning to sleep, Koharu? They read that right? And that young man is Night Maple? Because this scene was too shocking, their dark ninja did not dare to act rashly at all. Buofeng Shuimen frowned and said, Ye Feng, you listen to me, don't mess around, shut up. Ye Feng looked at Buofeng Shuimen coldly, and directly grabbed Xiaochun. Koharu hurriedly sealed his hands, but his hands were tied by the roots that came out. Chimu Shuamao also stood up and said, Ye Kid, if you have anything, you can wait for Naruto-sama to come back and make a decision, don't be impulsive. Impulsive? Ye Feng smiled and said, White Fang, what will happen to you if your son Kakashi is captured and wants to become a two-tailed human pillar force? Chimu Shuamao sighed and said, no matter what, you can't use lynching. Ye Feng smiled and said, I lynch? Do they deserve it? Saying that, Yokai directly threw Koharu in front of Neo. When Xiaochun looked up, he happened to meet the big round eyes of the second tail, and he was suddenly so frightened that his face turned pale, and he didn't dare to come out. And the second tail opposite her, looked at the Night Maple not far away, and also did not dare to come out. At the same time, Tuanzong and Mido Menyen, who were preparing to sneak people up, were also blocked by Ye Feng's doppelganger. Ye Feng, what are you doing? Tuanzong roared angrily, looked at Ye Feng and said, don't mess around, just now we also listened to the advice of Lord Uzumaki Mido, to protect Konoha, before opening the 4 purple flame array. Mido Menyen next to him also said, yes, Ye Kid, you are doing a little too much now, although Elder Koharu also has something wrong, but you can't do this to her. Ye Feng raised his hand, so frightened that Mido Menyen immediately shut up and made a counterfiant motion. At this time, the few ninjas of the administrative department, gathered behind Danzo and Mido Menyen, were all ninjas of the Mido clan and the dormitory clan. However, Ye Feng raised his hand, just touched his head, and said with a smile, the two don't need to be so nervous, I also want to ask the two of you, how exactly do you seal the two? Neo was brought by you. Tuanzong looked at Ye Feng quietly, thinking in his heart, Ye Feng is a medicine. Ye Feng said lightly, do you want me, or go over by yourself? Be bold. Pay attention to your tone. The ninja of the administrative department behind immediately cursed angrily. Shut up. Ye Feng raised his hand, and the ninja behind Mido Menyen was instantly wrapped in rice dumplings, by tree roots and vines. Their eyes were not covered, showing a look of horror, and it was useless to constantly struggle. On Jiao Shinai's side, Erwei lowered his head, looking at Ye Feng who didn't seem to notice him, and quickly pulled out his legs and ran. However, as soon as he turned around, his limbs were wrapped around tree roots and vines. Lying Groove, can you escape from such a distance? Niao is depressed. At the same time, Jiao Shinai used the King Kong blockade and once again tied the two tails in place. Lord Shuamao, what now? The dark ninja next to him asked softly. Watergate looked at Chimu Shuamao and said, Senior. Chimu Shuamao said in a deep voice, let's take a look before speaking. It seems that Ye Feng still has reason and will not kill them. After a short silence, Danzo and Mido Menyen chose to relent and followed Yokai to the front of Neo. Uzumaki Mido snorted and said, Danzo, Mido Menyen, sleep Koharu, you guys are so handsome. Danzo said respectfully, Uzumaki-sama, what do you mean by this? All this is with your consent. Jiao Shinai suddenly said angrily, you guys are lying. Tuanzong glanced at Jiao Shinai and said, isn't it? Ye Feng suddenly smiled and said, you guys called Grandma Mido, that's right. Now I subdued the two tails. Didn't you think Jiao Shinai was very suitable to be a two-tailed human pillar force just now? Tuanzong quickly shook his head and said, I don't know anything. Yes, Ye Feng, your words are not right. What Uzumaki-sama wants to do, it's all her choice, what does it have to do with us? Mido Menyen and Bedtime Koharu also quickly dissociated themselves. Uzumaki Mido looked at them coldly. And Jiao Shinai's chest heaved with anger, pointing at the three and saying, you guys are really calculating. Ye Feng stopped Jiao Shinai and looked at them and said, I think you guys are actually quite suitable to be the two-tailed human pillar force. As soon as these words came out, the faces of the three instantly changed. Not only these three people, Chimu Shuamao, Buofeng Shuimen, all showed a surprised look. Even Jiao Shinai and Uzumaki Mido were unexpected. The three of them are human pillar power? I have to say that Ye Feng's imaginative move completely stunned them. Danzo, Mido Menyen, and Koharu all subconsciously took a few steps back, revealing a look of horror. Don't look at the human pillar force as very strong, but they are definitely not willing to be the human pillar force. Because when you become a human pillar force, you are not completely individual, and everyone's eyes on you will be completely different. The people of the family look at you completely differently. You are no longer human, but half human and half monster. Moreover, when the human pillar force, sooner or later, it will get out of control, and then it will be completely devoured by the tailed beast and become the nourishment of the tailed beast. At that point, you're a monster through and through. Besides, becoming a two-tailed human pillar force is equivalent to becoming a tool person in Konoha village, with no personal freedom at all, and is monitored at all times. Most importantly, they became pillars of power, and their political careers were definitely gone. Instead, it became the war machine of Konoha village. Who wants to have such a life? Ye Feng's thoughts now were not to let them die so easily. Planting two tails is like planting a bomb in them. This bomb will not hurt Ye Feng, but it can blow them to pieces and make them regret offending Ye Feng. Episode 67, Tuanzong coughed and said, Ye Feng, you can really joke, the ninja world has never been such an old person, Julie. Mito Minyan also nodded and said, yes, we are not very suitable. Ye Feng looked at them with a smile and said, I said you are suitable, you are suitable. Don't you want to choose the two-tailed human pillar force? That's it. We? Danzo, Mito Minyan, and Koharu all had very ugly faces. Urwei looked at the three old men, showed a look of disgust, and couldn't help but say, the smell of old age is too bad, I don't want it. Ye Feng kicked Urwei and said, just you talk a lot of nonsense. Danzo, Mito Minyan, and Koharu heard Neo's words, and their faces immediately turned happy. Yes, Ye Feng, did you hear that? We don't fit. Isn't there a newly captured young girl from the mist-hidden village, named Terumi? I think she can. Ye Feng smiled and said, if you don't choose, then I will choose. Danzo, Mito Minyan, and Koharu suddenly showed angry looks on their faces. No one had ever disrespected them like Yokaid. What did Ji Maple do with them? At this time, Chimu Shuamao and Buofeng Shuemen also inquired a little about what was going on, and they watched the excitement on the side. They are not fools either, and after a little thought, they know that it is the problem of Danzo, Mito Minyan, and Koharu. Moreover, Kiki Shua Shigeru has long been dissatisfied with the concept of Danzo, what dark roots, what can sacrifice everything for Konoha, is. It doesn't matter if you sacrifice him or not. Mito Minyan had a sense of foreboding, and quickly looked at Kiki Shuamao and said, Shuamao, is this how you dark sect treats us Konoha elders? Does Naruto-sama know? Chimu Shuamao coughed and said, Elder Minyan, now Ye Feng is solving the problem of the two-tailed beast. I think he is the most skilled sealer here. You see that he sealed the nine-tailed beast so simply solved. If Yoriki thinks you are suitable, for Konoha's sake, I think I can trust him. For Konoha? Danzo, Mito Minyan, and Koharu looked angrily at Kiki Shua. Chimu Shuamao, what do you mean? Watch your words and deeds. What for Konoha? We don't fit at all. This is how the Dark Division protects us Konoha? When Naruto-sama returns, I will cure you. Ye Feng smiled. He didn't expect that Chimu Shuamao was also an old young master, but how could such a person commit suicide in the near future because of gossip? I'm afraid it's really persecution. Well, I think he's right. Don't you usually like to say it for Konoha? Today, you will sacrifice a little for Konoha. As soon as Ye Kid's words fell, roots and vines immediately rose under Mito Minyan's feet, tying his limbs heavily and making him unable to move at all. Then Mito Minyan, I think you are very suitable. Ye Feng said, and raised his fist, for Konoha. Mito Minyan's eyes widened and he shouted in horror, no. I don't want it. The second tail also shouted, I don't want to enter this old man's body. I don't want it. Shut up. Ye Feng punched a strange fist and smashed the two tails into the ground again. Tuanzong was so frightened that he took 2 steps back, his face pale, but he did not dare to act rashly. Xiaochun even felt lucky in his heart, watching Ye Feng raise his right hand, and 5 fingers respectively appeared the 5 attributes of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, and inserted into Mito Minyan's stomach. The exclusive sealing rune of the Uzumaki clan immediately appeared on Mito Minyan's stomach, which was very mysterious. Ye Feng, don't, you let me go, I promise you everything. Mito Minyan roared in fear, and even begged Uzumaki Mito for mercy. Uzumaki-sama Mito, spare your life, I know it's wrong, just for the sake of Mr. Kuruma, spare me. Jioshina saw Mito Minyan's appearance, and his heart was very relieved. And Uzumaki Mito shook his head and said, Mito Minyan, why are you getting older and less enlightened? I think White Fang is right, everything is for Konoha, the sacrifice she made is worth it. Ugh. In the midst of Mito Minyan's hell, Ye Feng stuffed Neo's brigade directly into the sealing array of Mito Minyan's stomach. However, Ye Feng added 2 layers of sealing techniques to this sealing array, which was equivalent to adding 2 layers of locks, which was very reliable. In this way, Mido Menyen became a two-tailed human pillar force, and it was almost impossible to use the kind of waste of the two-tailed chakra. Everyone looked at Mido Menyen and showed a very strange look. Mido Menyen had just been let go, and suddenly roared and rushed towards Ye Feng. Ye Feng, I'm going to fight with you. Bang! In the next second, Mido Menyen flew out upside down and hit the ground hard, his head covered in blood. But the wound quickly recovered. This is the human pillar force. But in Mido Manita's teeth, it became the same teeth as Neo Yugaku, just like a Yukai. When Koharu saw Mido Menyen's appearance, he was glad in his heart. If he became a human pillar force, it would be miserable. At this time, Xiaoqin's mind suddenly echoed Ye Feng's words, "Today, I will kill you. Ye Feng won't want to kill me, right?" Thinking of this, Xiaoqin suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, a Vajra rod fell from the sky, separating the two sides. When Xiaoqin saw that the ape-flying sun was coming, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief and shouted, "Ape Fly, you are finally here." Ape Fei looked at the completely destroyed training ground and frowned. What is going on? Sure enough, it was Ye Feng's wooden escape. Will he use immortal magic wood to escape? Sarutobi looked at Ye Kid, listening to sleeping Koharu crying and accusing Ye Feng. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Konoha also came, and when they saw Yokaid, their expressions were different. The eyes of the big snake pill were full of longing. The stronger Ye Feng was, the more he wanted Ye Feng's blood to do research. What genetic material in the blood made Ye Feng so powerful? Jiraiya was also thinking about whether the appearance of the night maple was a blessing or a curse for Konoha. If it is a disaster, even if he fights for his life, he must solve the hidden danger of Ye Feng. As for Tsunade, the mood is very mixed. Ye Feng's style of doing things is fundamentally different from that of the Thousand Hands clan. Whether it is grandpa or second grandfather, there is no such irritability as Ye Feng. Is it really good that the future of the Thousand Hands clan is handed over to Ye Feng? Listening to Koharu's crying, Sarutobi smiled bitterly. Ye Feng, this guy, is doing things too non-mainstream, and actually injected the second tail and brigade into Mido Menyen and turned it into a human pillar force? Young people are too cranky. But there was another voice in Ape Fei Richo's heart that said, this is the right thing to do. He didn't know when he had already felt that Mido Menitis and Koharu had changed and become as dark as Danzo. Now he was put up by Ye Feng, and he came to cry with himself? Episode 68, Koharu and Mizuto Menyen were stunned. Sarutobi, what did you say? Mido Menyen's face was very ugly, and he glared at the ape-flying sun. Ape Fei shook his head helplessly. Are you glaring at me useful? Ye Feng's doing this is indeed excessive, but isn't your approach even more excessive? He even started the idea of Uzumaki Mido and Kushina. This is completely self-inflicted death. What's more, I'm afraid I can't limit Ye Feng now. Ape Fei recalled the thousand-handed giant Buddha that covered the sky just now, and his heart was still full of shock. Suddenly I felt really old. Sarutobi looked at Mido Menyen and said, Menyen, if it doesn't happen, it happens. You can feel at ease to be a human pillar force. We Konoha will not treat you badly. Mido Menyen's eyes were bloodshot. Forget about it? Ye Feng, you have indeed overdone, although Elder Menyen has something wrong with him, but he is an elder of Konoha after all. Ye Feng nodded and said, well, I think the 3 generations of Hokage are right. Everyone is for Konoha. Elder Menyen, you can sacrifice for Konoha. Saying that, Ye Feng turned around and took Jioshinai's soft little hand and said, let's go home. Jioshina immediately said, Grandma Mido, let's go home. Uzumaki Mido nodded, glanced at Sarutobi Hinata, and immediately followed Yokaid and Jioshinai. Ape Fei, are you going to let him go? Ape Fei, you have seen it, he is so arrogant. Ape Fei, I want an explanation, otherwise, we are not finished. Sarutobi Hinata looked at Danzo, Mido Manita, and Koharu and said, I also want an explanation. Why did Uzumaki-sama let you open the 4 purple flame array inside, but you didn't open it? Why are you 2 elders no longer in the administration department, and you can still command the administration department? Why was the seal of the 2 tails artificially unsealed? Sarutobi looked at the 3 who did not speak, snorted and said, it is said that it is for Konoha, so now, when you need to contribute and sacrifice for Konoha, don't complain. Tuanzong gritted his teeth, leaned in front of Ape Flying Sun, and whispered, there is nothing wrong with everything the old man has done. If this continues, Konoha will not be the Konoha of all of us, but the Konoha of the Senju clan. At that time, was Konoha still Konoha? Sarutobi looked at Tuanzo coldly and said, Tuanzang, don't forget, Konoha was originally established by the Senju clan, and the 2 teachers are from the Senju clan, don't be ungrateful. After speaking, Ape Fei turned his head and left. However, along the way, Ape Fei listened to the news that the Dark Department kept transmitting, and his face became more and more shocked. Ye Feng single-handedly sealed the 9 tails and the second tails? The 3 generations of water shadow died in the hands of Ye Feng, and the corpses were all brought back? The 3 shinobi were all on the side, stunned when they heard the news. Is Night Maple so strong? Back home, after Uzumaki Mito entered his room, Ye Feng looked at Joshinai and directly hugged Joshinai into his arms. This time, it really scared Joshinai. The feeling like a roller coaster made him take the initiative to raise his head and offer his hot kiss to Ye Feng. First, the dragonfly points water and pecks gently. Then there was the storm. For a long time, Joshinai's face was full of shame, and he pushed Ye Feng away. I'm going to sleep. With that, Joshinai ran into his room, slammed the door, and closed the door. Joshinai was still thinking about whether Ye Feng would resist or not if she wanted to chase into the room. However, after a while, Joshinai secretly opened a little crack in the door, and Ye Feng had disappeared. Humph, pig's head. Men are big pigs trotters. At this time, Ye Feng, in his room, opened the character attributes, replaced the character card, and replaced the character card with an S-class character card, the original Water White Lotus. The properties now are: name, Ye Kid, strength, super shadow level, position, special shinobi, character cards, SSS level hand pillars, fusion degree 100%, S-class original Water Shadow White Lotus, fusion degree 10%, blood succession limit, god level Muduan, ninjutsu, flying thunder god art LV3, dirt reincarnation LV3, thunder thousand birds LV3, Amaranka LV3, Een Seal LV3, Hyakuno Jutsu LV3, for elephant seal LV3, Ghoul Seal LV3, Harem Art LV, Shuriken Shadow Avatar Art L3. After replacing Uzumaki Ashina's character card, Night Fang's sealing level immediately returned to its original state. But with the original Water Shadow White Lotus, Ye Feng learned all the ninjutsu of the original Water Shadow White Lotus, and the most skilled one was Shui Duan, which is the tradition of Wuin Village. Water Shadow is the strongest water ninja in Mist Hidden Village. Night Maple jumped from the window and disappeared into the night sky. Bang! Harem art. Ye Feng's harem technique is not tempting, but used to confuse people. Ye Feng's doppelganger, transformed into a fair beauty wearing a black tights, suddenly appeared on the way to the territory of the dormitory in the training ground. Then, Yorikid saw Koharu come over under the protection of several young ninjas in the clan. Xiaojun was still saying, "Give me a good eye on Ye Feng these days." Suddenly, these young ninjas saw the scenery ahead, and they were all stunned. They were all young and vigorous men, and when they saw Ye Feng's harem doppelganger, they naturally couldn't help it. And Ye Feng's doppelganger smiled, swung his seductive posture, and walked towards them. Koharu frowned, always feeling a little strange. Be careful. Yes, Elder Koharu. At this moment, Ye Feng's doppelganger suddenly struck. Water escape, water iron cannon. I saw Ye Kid make his hand into a pistol-like shape, shooting a liquid like a bullet from the tip of his index finger, instantly penetrating Xiaojun's body. Xiaojun's eyes widened, looking at Ye Feng, his body fell directly backwards, and blood splattered. Immediately afterwards, the ninjas of these families roared, "There are killers!" They instantly attacked towards the Night Maple doppelganger, and Ku Wu, shuriken in his hand, flew out and pierced the body of the Night Maple doppelganger. Bang! The shadow doppelganger is shattered. This is the shadow doppelganger? Suddenly, countless black tight-clad women appeared in all directions, shooting indiscriminately at Xiaojun. Xiaojun's eyes widened, and countless water and iron cannons were reflected in his pupils. Her body, like a tattered burlap bag, was instantly pierced. Blood splattered all over the young people, and their eyes widened. There are killers. Come on. At the same time, they lifted up Xiaojun, who was completely breathless. At this moment, they all panicked in their hearts. Elder Koharu actually died? Just around the corner in the shadows, a figure gradually disappeared. As I said, today, I will kill you. Ye Feng's figure had just disappeared, and the Wei Feng Shui gate arrived immediately. Elder Koharu was attacked? What the hell is going on here? Those panicked family ninjas were describing Yokaid's harem technique. It's a woman in a black tights who used the shadow doppelganger to kill Elder Koharu. She used water-done ninjutsu, which was shot with her fingers, like a pistol. Wei Feng Shui man looked at the scene, touched the water traces on the ground with his hand, and sniffed it. It is indeed a water escape. Wei Feng Shui man's first reaction was Night Maple. But it was completely different from the description of the family ninja present. A water ninja. Could it be the revenge of the Misty Hidden Village? But why did he take revenge on Koharu? Wei Feng Shui man had no clue at all, so he could only dispose of Koharu's body and immediately return to the Hokage's office to report. Tonight, for the Ape Flying Sun, it is a sleepless night. Episode 69, Hokage Office. Snap. Tuanzong slapped the chair on the chair, looked at Ape Fei Ri with anger on his face and said, Ape Fei, Elder Kohara died like this. It must have nothing to do with Ye Feng. Zilai couldn't help but say, Elder Tuanzang, just now Watergate also said that the assassin used Shui Duan, and it is likely to be the secret art of the Ghost Lamp clan of Wuyin Village, the Iron Cannon technique. How can it be related to Ye Feng? Although Zilai also did not have much good impression of Ye Feng, Tuanzang's prejudice made Zilai couldn't help but complain. Elder Xiachun just offended Ye Feng, and he was on the street. Do you say it will matter? Just look it up. Just let Ye Feng do something wrong. Where is the face of our high level? When he said this, his eyes were gloomy, staring at the ape-flying sun. Mito Menyen, who was sitting next to him, also had a low gaze and did not say a word. On the other side, Konoha Sanshin was sitting, also very quiet, watching the bustle of Mito Menyen and Danzo. They were all curious about what the teacher would do. Sarutobi sat on the main throne, although his hair had begun to turn a little gray now, but the ape-flying sun chop at this time was the pinnacle of his ninja career. This ninja doctor's body is still at the peak of his prime, and at the same time, the combat experience accumulated over the years can exert more than 100% of his strength, so he can compete with the 3 generations of Thunder Shadow. At this time, Ape Fei Richo was still looking at the report, frowned, and raised his head to look at Tuanzong. So what do you mean? Ape Fei Ri sat up straight, looked at Tuanzong, and did not flinch at all. Mito Menyen said in a deep voice, what does it mean not to mean? Ye Feng did this. It is completely a bully act. Get a little power, think that you can do whatever you want. What is the difference between this and Uchiha back then? If you don't subdue him now, in the future, the whole Konoha will not be the current Konoha. He will be the next Uchiha Madara. Leave him in Konoha, he will destroy the whole of Konoha. Tsunade couldn't help but interrupt Mito Menyen's words. Ahem, Elder Menyen, your words are too exaggerated. How can Ye Feng Hode be comparable to Uchiha Madara? Mito Menyen stared at Tsunade and said, Tsunade Heim, I'm telling the truth, a kind person, will you inject Neo into me? Tsunade shrugged and said, why not? Ye Feng not only inherited the wooden dun of our Senju family, but also inherited the sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan, and is a peerless genius. He thinks that Elder Menyen, your body is suitable, that is suitable. That is the opinion of professionals. You usually say that for Konoha, you can sacrifice everything. How come it came to you? It changed. Tsunade you. Mito Menyen was furious, and the evil 2-tailed chakra in his body couldn't help but pop up. His eyes turned into cat's eyes, sharp teeth, very hideous and terrifying. Danzo was suddenly frightened by Mito Menyen, and quickly stood up and took 2 steps back. Menyen, you sober up. Ape-flying sun chopper suddenly appeared in front of Mito Menyen, and the 5 fingers of his right hand erupted out 5 kinds of chakra of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, directly inserting the seal. 5-element seal. Mito Menyen's body emitted a roar of the 2 tails and brigades, and then the blue chakra on the surface of Mito Menyen's body was all recycled into the body. Ape Fei Ri sighed and said, Menyen, you go back first, your current appearance is not suitable. Mito Menyen's face was full of sadness and indignation, took a deep breath, stood up, walked out, and at first glance at the back, he felt 10 years older in an instant. He had already expected it when he became the 2-tailed human pillar force himself. As long as there are 2 tails in his body, there will continue to be such a situation of getting out of control today. What elders, what advisors, overnight, nothing. When people look at themselves, they will only think that they are not a monster. Finally restrained, surveilled. Night maple is too poisonous. As soon as Mito Menyen left, Ape Fei Ri slashed at the Big Snake Pill and said, Big Snake Pill, order the Dark Department to keep an eye on Elder Menyen. He has just become a human pillar force, and his mood is still a little unstable, so he can avoid hurting others. Yes, teacher. Then, Sarutobi Richo glanced at Tuanzo again and said, Tuanzo, everything you just said is your own speculation. What Uchiha spot? He is not a Uchiha clan, he will not be like Mr. Kuruma said. Tsunade nodded and said, the teacher is right, Ye Feng is my grandfather's bloodline inheritance, and at the same time learned the most exquisite sealing technique of the Vortex clan. This time it was the 2nd tail that you brought back by Elder Tuanzo lost control and almost caused a catastrophe. If it weren't for Yokui's move, I don't know how much Konoha would have suffered. Danzo's chest heaved with anger, and he looked at Tsunade and said, if it weren't for Yiki's move, we could also seal it. You look at the field north of the training ground, it's all destroyed. Humph, Elder Tuanzang, do you know the sealing technique? Do you take a head to seal? You, Ape-flying sun chopper interrupted the 2 and said, enough, Tuanzang, your prejudice against Ye Feng is too great, let's take a look at this. Saying that, Ape-flying sun chopper threw the information of Ye Feng's killing of 3 generations of water shadow in front of Tuanzang. Tuanzang picked up the information with an ugly face, and his face suddenly changed. After a full 10 minutes, Tuanzong looked back and forth at the information, snorted, and said, I understand, leave. Sarutobi sighed, looked at Jiraiya and Tsunade, and said, you guys go back too. Yes, teacher. Only one person was left in the office. Ape Fei said to himself to the void, Pillar Sensei, I don't want to hide and die, but he has already entered the evil path. Ye Feng's figure flashed, returned to his room, looked up, and found that there was a person outside the door. When I opened the door, I saw that it was Uzumaki Mito. Uzumaki Mito glanced at Yokaide and said, not sleeping? Well, Grandma Mito, what's wrong? Uzumaki Mito looked at Ye Feng quietly for a second before saying, you did a good job today, don't worry. Ye Feng smiled, he hadn't been worried. He just didn't want to kill Mito Minyan and Danzo so easily, killing them like this, and all the evil deeds they had done before would probably dissipate invisibly, and no one would know about it again. What Yokaide wants is to expose all the things that Mito Minyan and Danzo have done in Konoha over the years to the sun, let everyone in Konoha know, let them be ruined, and nailed to the pillar of shame forever. I understand what you're thinking, Ape Flying Sun / will give us a satisfactory result. Yokaide was stunned for a moment. At this time, Uzumaki Mito was still looking forward to the Ape Flying Sun? As Hokage, Lord of Konoha, but indecisive. He could even let go of the big snake pill because of the feelings of his master and apprentice, and let his old friend Tuanzo do those dirty things because of the friendship between his old friends for many years. Seeing that Yokaide didn't believe it, Uzumaki Mito smiled and said, wait. In this way, Uzumaki Mito dropped such an inexplicable word and left. Early the next morning, Ye Feng was woken up by Joshinai again. Unexpectedly, it was the Ape Flying Sun. As soon as Ape Flying Richo saw Ye Feng, he opened the door and invited Ye Feng to join the administration department, and directly parachuted into the head of the administration department. Hey, Elder Akimichi Takei's health has suddenly deteriorated and he can't manage the administration department. I think it's time to give it to the young man to exercise. What do you think? At the same time, due to the insufficient number of high-level officials in the Dark Department, Ape Flying Sun hopes that Ye Feng will hold 2 positions and serve as the deputy head of the Dark Department at the same time, and he can organize a detachment. And now the minister of the Dark Department is none other than the white fan banner Mushuo Shigeru. Ding, based on the existing situation of the host, give 3 options. Option 1, refuse all of Ape Richo's invitations and be a salted fish at home. Reward, Danzo Kaze Ninjutsu, full series. Option 2, decline one of the invitations of the Ape Sun / reward, Akimichi clan secret art multiplication technique. Option 3, agree to all the invitations of Saryuta. Rewards, clues of the guilt evidence of the group, ultra-long-range video recorder. Ye Feng looked at these 3 choices and said lightly, okay, I promise you. Although the art of multiplication is attractive, Tuanzang's evil evidence clues and ultra-long-range video recorder are what Ye Feng needs most now. This ultra-long-range video recorder is very small, similar to the video recorder in Earth time. There is also a description that this ultra-long-range video recorder is the latest black technology product of Air Shinobi. Images up to 1,000 meters can be recorded, the only drawback is that the maximum time is 10 minutes. It seems that the technology in the Hokage world is not as low as Ye Feng imagined. Before leaving, Sarutobi sighed and said, Ye Feng, I hope you can understand that I, as the Hokage, are balancing the 2 ends of the balance all the time. Sometimes you have to lean to the side, which is also unacceptable. In short, from today onwards, you are the person handpicked by my Ape Flying Sun. When the ape flew away for half a day, Ye Feng figured it out. The Ape Flying Sun chopped this old thief, not indecision, but a name. Afraid of his own reputation, he likes to borrow the hands of others. Killing his classmates, Ape Flying Sun Chopper can't bear to do it himself. Ape Flying Sun Chopper has already handed the knife to Ye Feng. As for whether to kill or not, it is Ye Feng's matter, and Ape Flying Sun Chopper does not know anything. It's really cunning. Episode 70, Ye Feng has 2 positions, no, it is 1 body and 3 positions. Because in addition to the newly appointed head of the administration department and the deputy minister of the Dark Department, at the ninja school, Yokaide is still the vice principal and the teacher of the 7th class. Ye Feng felt a little difficult for this. I don't want to go to work. Joshinai cried and laughed, and poked Ye Feng with his green fingers. You slacker. Ye Feng backhanded Joshinai into his arms. I'm not lazy, I don't think I have time to accompany you. Look, the administrative department, the Dark Department, the school, everywhere needs me. Do I have 3 heads and 6 arms? I don't want to work overtime every day and stay up all night. Joshinai was in Ye Feng's arms, and said with a blushing face, that's the same, if only you could be separated, doppelganger? When Ye Feng heard Joshinai's words, he was slightly stunned, and then showed a look of joy. Yes, doppelganger. Jiao Xinai, you really are Wangfu. Ye Feng grabbed Jiao Xinai and kissed her deeply. Woohoo! Jiao Xinai suddenly softened in Ye Feng's arms. For a long time, Jiao Xinai blushed and pushed Ye Feng away. What are you doing? Grandma Mito saw it all. Ye Feng smiled and said, then let's go out. You really don't go to work, as Naruto-sama said just now, you have to go to the administration department to report in the morning. Ye Feng said with a smile on his face, go, why don't you go? Saying that, the night maple made a seal. Bang! There are 2 more shadow doppelgangers behind him, you look at me, I look at you. No, there's one less. Bang! There is another shadow avatar, a total of 3 shadow avatars. Jiao Xinai, you have to remind me that the shadow avatar is okay. For others, it was a little difficult to maintain the shadow doppelganger at the same time for a long time, but for Ye Feng, it was nothing at all. Shadow doppelgangers use chakra to create physical doppelgangers who can act and think like the caster, and have a consciousness independent of the caster's body. That's fine. You, go to the administration department to report. You, go to the dark department to report. You, go to school to report. The 3 shadow doppelgangers looked at their real bodies speechlessly. What about you? Of course, I accompanied Jiao Xinai to go shopping. Jiao Xinai suddenly rolled her eyes speechlessly, but her heart was sweet. Ye Feng's doppelganger 1 came to the school, and Buofeng Shuimen specially came to find it. Ye Feng Jun, congratulations on your promotion to the head of the administration department. And the Deputy Minister of Darkness, Buofeng Shuimen, who is also the Deputy Minister of the Dark Department, is naturally aware of Ye Feng's current position changes. After all, it is the secret service organization of the Dark Department and Konoha. Teacher Zilai said, if you are busy, you can come less from the school, or I will bring the 7th class. Ye Feng glanced at Buofeng Shuimen and said, no, you are not very lucky. Buofeng Shuimen was stunned for a moment, puzzled. How did Ye Feng see that he was unlucky? Ye Feng also subconsciously said such words, but when he thought about it, there was nothing wrong at all. You look at the original, Kakashi, Obito, doesn't it become a tragedy? Even if Obito is whitewashed, it cannot change the fact of the tragedy. In the end, Obito and Rin met both spiritually, and they didn't know if it was Obito's own imagination. And in the Ninetales Rebellion, he died directly with Jiao Xinai. This is simply a lone star. On the contrary, Naruto did not have him, but he went all the way, relying on his mouth to overcome strong enemies, and finally became the 7th generation Hokage. Sometimes, luck is such a mystery. In any case, Ye Feng was unwilling to hand over the 7th shift to Watergate. Although this is only Ye Feng's doppelganger, it is completely consistent in terms of ideas and thinking. Teacher Ye Feng. Yokei turned his head and saw that it was the 3 elementary school students of the 7th class, Obito, Kakashi, and Rin. You're here. Ye Feng took out the teacher's manual and glanced at it. What you should do now as a teacher is, summarize the last task? Well, this suggestion is good, Ape Flying Sun to cut this thief old man, it is still a little material. So Ye Feng closed the book and said, then let's review, the last mission, from the beginning, your first encounter with the enemy, and your later performance, it can be said that the progress has been very great. I still remember when you first killed that misty shinobu with soil, it was miserable. Teacher. Obito suddenly blushed, this is simply Obito's black history. Kakashi and Rin both laughed. Teacher, don't talk about this in the future, please. Obito looked at Ye Feng, gritting his teeth, my grand Uchiha new generation is carrying the handle, if this matter is spread, won't it be laughing to death? At the Dark Department headquarters, White Fan patted the shoulder of Ye Feng Doppelganger 2 and said, I have a new mission to perform, fortunately you are here, maybe half an hour later, I will not be here, this is your token, representing the power of the Dark Department high level. Inside Konoha, there is no obstruction. Ye Feng nodded and took the token. White Fang smiled and said, go back quickly, in case the doppelganger is broken, the token will be dropped. Ye Feng looked at White Fang in surprise, you see my doppelganger? White Fang laughed and said, if I can't see the doppelganger, can I still be this dark minister? Boy, you underestimate me too much. After that, White Fang walked out. Ye Feng looked at the white-toothed fire shadow half-sleeve, slightly lost in thought. Konoha White Fang, worthy of the name. But such a character would commit suicide? Wouldn't it be this mission? White Fang senpai. White Fang walked to the door and stopped. Ye Feng didn't know what to say, so he had to say, safe journey. If there is anything, you can always find me, got it? White Fang waved his hand and left the headquarters. Night Fang's doppelganger 3 came to the administration department. On the first floor, it was all empty, just 2 people. When they saw Ye Feng coming, they were slightly stunned, took a closer look, and quickly stood up. Lord Ye Feng, you are here. Early in the morning, the two were notified that Akimichi, who had just taken office, was now undergoing emergency treatment due to a recurrence of his injury and was unable to work, so he had to step down. The new minister is Ye Feng. Just the two of you? Lord Ye Feng, I don't know, or should I take you to the office first? Ye Feng nodded politely and said, okay, it's troublesome. The two of them secretly breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. It seemed that Lord Ye Feng was not as difficult to get along with as rumored. Then, Ye Qid was taken to the second floor. The location on the second floor is also empty. Nima, what about people? Ye Feng looked left and right. Why was there no one? This tea is too weird, right? As soon as I sat down, things came. Lord Ye Feng, here is the mission document of Wuyin Village. Mission documents for the Village of Mist? Ye Feng glanced at it and was slightly stunned. Because of the time of death of the third generation of Water Shadow, Kirihide Village specially sent an embassy to Konoha Village. No wonder the old monkey wants to send himself to parachute into the administrative department. He is the one who slashed and killed 3 generations of Water Shadows, and he is the most qualified of all people to deal with this matter. The document says that they want to retrieve the bodies of the 3 generations of Water Shadow in Wuyin Village, and also bring back the descendants of nobles. At the same time, I want to take this opportunity to express my friendship with Konoha, and plan to organize a joint exam for Chinese ninja. Of course, this Zonin exam is equivalent to a gambling battle. If the Wuyin Village wins, retrieve the corpse of the 3 generations of Water Shadow and take back the descendant of the nobility. If Wuyin Village loses, it will also retrieve the corpses of the 3 generations of Water Shadow and take back the noble descendant Xiaomeiyu, but it will have to pay a big price. This is, of course, the idea of the misty hidden village. Konoha's side naturally has its own ideas. The two sides did not agree on their ideas, so the mission of Wuyin Village had to come. Because now the initiative is on Konoha's side. Ye Feng killed 3 generations of Water Shadow, and now the dragons in Wuyin Village are leaderless, and this is the biggest initiative.